The chamber of the Galactic Council shimmered beneath the red light of the dying star Vortal. Its glow filtered through crystal walls, scattering across the vast amphitheater filled with hundreds of alien delegates. Bioluminescent tendrils, metallic carapaces, and translucent wings reflected the same uneasy light. The air itself seemed to hum, a low, collective anticipation. Ambassador Elias Varen sat motionless in the human delegation's small ring near the outer edge. Around him, the endless spiral of alien voices rolled through translator drones. Every sound was filtered, rephrased, and delivered into his ear as measured diplomacy, words polished to hide daggers. He watched as the Zorith Chancellor XY Torvale spoke from the central dais. The Chancellor's sleek carapace glistened like obsidian, his 6 eyes cold and unblinking. Neutrality, XY Tor's voice echoed, deep and smooth, is the only path to preservation. The Seraphic Union and the Dominion's conflict must not pull the rest of us into their madness. To interfere is to invite extinction. Murmurs of agreement rippled across the chamber. The phrase invite extinction repeated in dozens of languages, a warning, a prophecy, a threat. Elias folded his hands, concealing the tremor in his thumb. For 50 years, humanity had attended these gatherings, nodding, listening, pretending to belong. He had memorized every rule, every custom, every deception. Yet each time he sat here, he felt humanity's absence echoed in the Council's condescension. Behind him, his aide Commander Rael leaned closer and whispered, "They'll expect us to abstain again. Keep quiet. No sudden moves." Elias gave no reply. His gaze drifted upward to the hollow banners shimmering with planetary symbols. The Dominion's insignia glowed like a black sun. The seraphic crest, pale and winged, flickered opposite. Between them, the Council's neutral emblem pulsed weakly, as though the galaxy itself hesitated to take a side. The session's presiding arbiter, a being of floating glass and light, turned its faceted head toward Elias's ring. "Representative of the United Terran Alliance," it announced, "you have remained silent. Do you concur with the proposal for universal neutrality?" All eyes shifted. The human section of the amphitheater seemed to shrink beneath the weight of attention. Even the ambient hum dimmed. Elias rose slowly. The motion drew an involuntary murmur from the delegates. Humans were still considered newcomers, aggressive, unpredictable, too passionate for diplomacy. Every gesture mattered. He looked across the chamber, and saw species older than his civilization's recorded history staring back, entities that had watched stars die and empires rise. Some viewed him with curiosity. Others, with barely concealed disdain. Elias's voice cut through the silence, clear and calm. "No," he said. The translation drone stuttered. Several delegates turned toward their consoles, certain they had misheard. XY Tor's head tilted slightly. "Ambassador Varen, repeat your response." Elias's tone didn't waver. "Humanity does not concur. We will not remain neutral." A whisper storm spread like static across the tiers. Translator drone's word, projecting 1,000 interpretations at once. The arbiter's crystalline surface dimmed as if the system faltered. "You oppose neutrality?" the arbiter asked. Elias's answer was steady. "Yes. Humanity is joining the war." The chamber erupted. Dozens of delegates shouted at once, flashes of bioluminescence, vibrating membranes, metallic clangs of outrage. The sound collided into a deafening roar. Security drones activated, hovering between factions ready to intercept physical aggression. Elias stood firm, hands clasped behind his back. XY Tor's voice cut through the chaos, sharp as a blade. "You presume to drag an entire species into a war that does not concern you? Humanity's fleets are small. Your colonies are fragile. You cannot even defend your own borders." Elias met the alien's gaze. "Perhaps. But we remember who burned our colonies while the Council watched. We remember whose ships crossed our borders claiming strategic necessity." A flicker, barely noticeable, crossed the Chancellor's features. Guilt? Irritation? Hard to tell. History is filled with mistakes, HFY replied smoothly. Do not compound them with suicide. Elias's voice carried across the tiers. Silence in the face of tyranny is not peace, it is surrender. Humanity will stand with those who resist domination, not those who profit from it. Gasps, growls, metallic scraping filled the chamber again. From the seraphic delegation, a pale, winged figure rose. Ambassador Varen, it said, its voice like a chime. You risk annihilation. The Dominion will not forgive this. Elias inclined his head. Perhaps. But if survival demands complicity, then humanity chooses risk. He could feel Rael's unease behind him, the silent plea not to push further. But Elias knew this moment would define centuries. He thought of his homeworld, ocean scarred yet healing, cities rebuilt from dust. He thought of his daughter's last transmission before her ship vanished near the Zorith frontier. He took a breath and continued. For generations, we believed neutrality meant safety. We learned it meant silence. We will not be silent anymore. The arbiter's voice quivered through the chamber. Ambassador, the Council must consider the consequences of such. The consequences are already here. Elias interrupted, tone ironclad. You all fear what will happen when humanity fights. I suggest you fear what happens if we don't. The room froze again. Even the ambient hum of the starship suspended above the chamber seemed to pause. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, slow and deliberate, HFY rose from his seat. His towering frame loomed beneath the Council's central light. Then humanity signs its extinction, he declared. Elias met the words without flinching. So be it. We've survived extinction before. The Chancellor's mandibles flexed, releasing a low, guttural sound, a Zoritha's equivalent of a curse. Then he turned and exited the chamber, his entourage following in precise formation. The session broke into chaos once more. Delegates shouted motions, demanded sanctions, argued about trade embargoes. Amid the turmoil, Elias remained standing, still as stone. Rael stepped beside him. You've just declared war on half the galaxy. Elias finally exhaled, his voice low. Not war. Conviction. He walked out before the session adjourned, the noise fading behind him like the dying echo of a storm. Outside the chamber, the corridor stretched into a transparent tunnel overlooking the burning star. Its crimson light bathed him in color that looked too much like blood. Through the glass, ships drifted silently, ambassadors, merchants, diplomats, all part of a system that mistook stillness for peace. He pressed his hand to the cool surface and whispered, almost to himself, They'll remember this day. Behind him, Rael's voice came, subdued. What if you're wrong? Elias didn't turn. Then we fall trying to be right. He looked once more into the fading fire of Vortal, a dying sun that refused to go dark quietly. In its reflection, he saw Earth, scarred, stubborn, defiant. And somewhere deep within him, a quiet certainty formed. The galaxy was about to remember what it meant when humans chose to fight. The human embassy orbiting Vortal had never known silence. Even before the declaration, it thrummed with the mechanical heartbeats of life support systems, drones, and translators. But now, that silence was heavier than vacuum. Every corridor, every viewport, every shadow felt watched. Ambassador Elias Varen stood before the observation deck, gazing at the crimson sun that had witnessed his defiance. Its dying light painted the chamber like a wound that wouldn't heal. Behind him, the news feeds flickered with alien broadcasters, each voice condemning humanity's decision. Human envoy destabilizes Council unity. Earth declares irrational allegiance to conflict. Diplomatic suicide. Every headline pulsed with condemnation, looping endlessly across the hollow screens. Commander Rael entered quietly, face tight with exhaustion. We're surrounded by Council patrols. Officially for our protection. Unofficially. Elias didn't move. Surveillance. Worse, Rael said. Containment. They've frozen all docking requests. We can't leave orbit. Elias finally turned. They think a cage will change our mind. Rael sighed. A cage can still become a tomb. The remark hung in the air like smoke. Outside, diplomatic ships of every color and design hovered in precise formation, but the human vessel Unity Dawn, sleek, angular, and unadorned, floated apart, like an exile that refused to bow. Elias approached the table at the center of the room. Its hollow surface flickered to life, revealing a web of transmissions from Earth, frantic debates, planetary protests, and declarations of support. The United Terran Assembly seal glowed faintly at the top. "The Council's sanctions are already starting," Rael said, scrolling through the data. "Trade restrictions. Suspended resource routes. Even allies are hesitating." Elias studied the map of glowing routes, arteries of interstellar commerce that were beginning to dim. "Fear travels faster than light," he murmured. Before Rael could answer, the door hissed open. A mechanical voice announced, "Visitor authorized by the Galactic Council." 2 council guards entered, their crystalline armor reflecting the room's red hue. Between them walked High Chancellor HFY Vale. Elias felt the atmosphere tighten. The guards positioned themselves by the door, weapons sheathed but ready. HFY's tone was soft, almost civil. "I trust your accommodations are satisfactory, Ambassador?" "Considering I'm effectively imprisoned," Elias replied. "I've stayed in worse." The Chancellor's mandibles flexed slightly, a Zorith approximation of a smile. "You've caused an extraordinary disturbance. Entire sectors are in uproar. The Seraphic Union calls you savior. The Dominion calls you fool. And you?" Elias asked. "I call you dangerous." Elias stepped closer. "Then we understand each other." The Chancellor moved with deliberate slowness, examining the holographic map of human territories. "Your species' ambition will destroy you. You mistake courage for destiny. The Council is not your battlefield." Elias's voice lowered. "Destiny isn't claimed by permission. It's forged by necessity. You fear us because you know what happens when humans stop asking to belong." HFY's gaze sharpened. "I fear instability. The Dominion built order from chaos. You would shatter it for sentiment. Order built on fear isn't order," Elias said. "It's paralysis." The Chancellor turned toward the viewport, the dying star's light glinting off his carapace. "The last time humanity went to war, your world burned. 3 billion dead. You learned nothing from it. We learned that surviving isn't the same as living." The silence between them stretched, measured, calculated. Finally, HFY spoke. "Retract your declaration. I will ensure the Council spares your world further humiliation." Elias almost smiled. "You think this is about pride? Everything about humanity is about pride." "No," Elias said softly. "It's about memory." HFY regarded him for a moment longer, then turned to leave. "Your fleets are small, your colonies scattered. The Dominion could erase you before your first ship crosses the border." Elias met his gaze evenly. "Then you'd better move quickly. We're already building faster than you think." HFY stopped at the doorway, his silhouette framed against the crimson light. "History will not remember you kindly." "History," Elias said, "is written by those who outlive their judges." When the doors sealed shut, the silence returned, thicker now, heavy with unspoken threats. Rael exhaled. "He's right about one thing. The Dominion can wipe us out." Elias looked back at the flickering holomap. "Maybe. But fear only matters if we let it dictate who we are." He tapped a command into the console. The display shifted to encrypted transmissions, direct feeds from the Terran High Command. Fleet mobilization orders, shipyards reactivated, alliance negotiations underway. Humanity was moving. Rael stared at the data. "You realize this makes you the face of defiance. The entire galaxy will hold you responsible." Elias nodded once. "Then they'll know whose voice started the storm." A low tremor shuddered through the deck plating, so subtle Rael thought it was his imagination until warning lights flickered. The security drones activated instantly. "Explosion detected," a mechanical voice reported. "Deck 4, Diplomatic Wing." Elias was already moving. the corridor beyond filled with smoke and alarms. Flames flickered behind shattered panels. Security drones converged, their lights slicing through the haze. They reached the blast site. The human delegation's quarters, ruined. A crater of melted alloy smoked at the center. 2 aides lay motionless under debris. Rael knelt beside them, voice shaking. Assassination attempt. Elias stared at the destruction, the acrid air burning his lungs. He knew this wasn't random. The Council's containment had just evolved into something lethal. Within minutes, Council medics arrived, escorted by guards. HFY Tor's insignia gleamed on one of their chests. Rael hissed. "They're covering it up." Elias said nothing. His gaze fixed on the ceiling, where faint scorch marks outlined the explosive's entry point, precision work, meant to kill him. Hours later, the chamber was silent again. The dead were taken away. The smell of smoke lingered. Elias sat before a recording terminal. His reflection shimmered against the static feed. He spoke with deliberate calm, knowing every human colony, every shipyard, every listening post would hear it soon. This message is for all Terrans. Today, the galaxy has shown us its fear. Not of our weapons, but of our will. We are surrounded by those who call submission wisdom. But humanity was not built to bow. We are not aggressors, we are witnesses who refuse to remain silent. Remember that courage does not begin with strength. It begins with standing alone. He paused, the glow of the terminal illuminating the bruises along his neck. If they fear us for what we might become, then let them fear rightly. He ended the transmission. Rael entered quietly. You've just lit a fuse that can't be put out. Elias leaned back. Good. Maybe it's time the dark had a little light. From the viewport, the vast network of Council ships glittered like a cage around them. But far in the distance, a blue flare ignited, a Terran signal jump beacon. Humanity's fleets were mobilizing. Rael followed his gaze. They'll strike first. You know that. They always do, Elias said. The difference is, this time we'll strike back. He turned from the window. The red light of Vortal dimmed as the Galactic Council chamber had never known such chaos. The air itself seemed alive with panic, hollow screens flickered, translation drones stuttered, and envoys shouted across tiers in 100 languages. Emergency lights pulsed crimson through the haze of confusion. Elias Varen stood at the center of it all, silent amid the storm he had unleashed. News feeds blazed above him, displaying live footage from the outer sectors. Terran fleets engaging the Zorth Dominion at the Vorn line. Silver ships of human design cut through enemy formations with surgical precision. Each broadcast showed something the galaxy had forgotten, humans fighting not for conquest, but conviction. The Arbiter's crystal form glowed faintly as it tried to restore order. Delegates, control yourselves. The Council will reconvene. Reconvene? A serpentine envoy hissed. The humans have declared open war. They attacked only after the Dominion crossed neutral space, shouted another. They're defending seraphic colonies. Elias remained still, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the holomap where bright blue human signatures advanced steadily. The sight should have terrified him. Instead, he felt a strange calm. Commander Rael appeared beside him, breath short. We just got the report. The Unity Dawn's fleet has broken the Dominion blockade at Vorn. 3 Zorth dreadnoughts destroyed, no civilian losses. Elias's jaw tightened. And the Council? They're calling for sanctions. Again. He almost smiled. They're predictable, at least. From across the chamber, High Chancellor HFY Tor strode in. The crowd's noise faltered instantly. The Zorth's obsidian armor glimmered under the dying red light filtering through the dome. His voice cut through the air, low and resonant. You've ignited a war that will consume your species, Varen. Elias turned to face him. We didn't ignite anything. We simply stopped pretending there wasn't a fire. HFY Tor's eyes flashed. You call this honor? You call this justice? Look at your feeds, your ships burn, your worlds tremble, and your enemies multiply. Elias's voice was steady, almost conversational. They fight because they choose to. Because someone finally drew a line the galaxy could see. A murmur swept through the chamber. Some delegates looked away, others leaned forward, as if drawn to the gravity of the confrontation. You mistake stubbornness for virtue, HFY Tor said, pacing slowly. Your people were spared extinction once before. Do you truly wish to test the galaxy's mercy again? Elias met his gaze without flinching. Mercy is irrelevant to those who have already buried their dead. The Chancellor's mandibles flexed. You cannot win. Elias stepped closer, voice lowering to a measured calm. Perhaps not. But we can make sure you don't either. The tension cracked like lightning between them. The Arbiter's voice broke the silence. Enough! This council exists to preserve stability. Elias turned toward the Arbiter. Stability is what allowed tyranny to thrive. You called it peace. We call it paralysis. A surge of whispers rippled through the delegates. Words like truth, defiance, and insanity echoed from different corners. Before anyone could respond, a new transmission illuminated the chamber, a live feed from the Seraphic frontier. The image showed Terran Marines disembarking on a half-burned colony world. They moved through ruins, lifting civilians from rubble, shielding alien children with their armor. The voice of a Seraphic field commander filled the air. The humans, they came uninvited. They're not conquering, they're helping us rebuild. The chamber fell silent. Even HFY Tor hesitated. His eyes flickered toward the screen, then back to Elias. You're manufacturing sympathy. Elias shook his head. We're showing truth. The Chancellor's tone hardened. The Dominion will not tolerate your interference. You've made yourself an enemy to every established order. Good, Elias said quietly. It's time the established orders were afraid. Gasps and low murmurs swelled again, but Elias's attention had already shifted. Across the holo displays, the battle reports multiplied. Terran ships liberating colonies. Relief convoys deployed. Refugee fleets escorted by human cruisers. Every act of defiance spread faster than the Council could censor. Rael leaned close. You're turning them, Elias. The delegates, some are questioning the Dominion's conduct. Elias's expression remained unreadable. They should question their silence first. Moments later, HFY Tor approached him again, slower now, the authority in his stride tempered by something else, uncertainty. Do you truly believe this ends with your species alive? Elias's reply was quiet but clear. Alive isn't the same as free. For a long moment, the two leaders stood face to face, ideology against ideology, conviction against control. Around them, the Council's noise dimmed into a strange, collective awareness. Something had shifted. The Arbiter broke the silence once more. The Council must vote, neutrality or engagement. Delegates began murmuring. For the first time in living memory, neutrality no longer felt like safety, it felt like guilt. HFY Tor turned sharply toward the assembly. You would destroy centuries of order because of one reckless species? A Seraphic envoy rose, wings trembling. Because they reminded us what order cost. Elias said nothing. He simply watched the ripple spread, fear giving way to courage, uncertainty to conviction. Moments later, a voice from the upper tiers shouted, Human fleets are offering protection to neutral colonies. Another delegate. Zoreth patrols retreating from the Vorn sectors. HFY Tor's composure fractured. You cannot undo what we built. Elias answered softly. We're not undoing it. We're rebuilding it without chains. The Chancellor stared at him for a long, hollow moment, then turned sharply and exited the chamber. His guards followed, the sound of their steps echoing like iron nails against stone. The Arbiter's voice rose above the confusion. The Council will recess until the conflict is assessed. But Elias knew what had already happened. The illusion had cracked. The galaxy had seen too much to pretend again. He walked out of the chamber, Rael beside him. The corridors outside glowed with the same blood-red light, but something in it felt different, less oppressive, more alive. Reports from Earth, Rael said, half smiling for the first time. The assembly voted unanimous support. Even the colonies beyond Proxima joined. You started a movement. Elias's gaze lingered on the distant stars. No, he said quietly. Humanity did. They reached the observation deck. Through the vast glass curve, the star vortal burned faintly, collapsing into its final phase. Its light pulsed slower now, the rhythm of a dying heart. Yet beyond it, new lights flared, ships entering slip space, their drives igniting the darkness. Look at that, Rael whispered. Elias nodded slowly. Every one of those lights is a choice. He stood in silence for a long time, watching humanity scatter across the void, fragile, flawed, but unwilling to yield. For all the chaos and fear, a strange serenity settled in his chest. Rael broke the silence. What now? Elias's gaze stayed on the stars. Now we earn what we declared. He turned to leave, but paused at the door. Record this, he said softly. Rael activated the console. Elias faced the viewport and spoke, not to the council, but to the galaxy itself.